Welcome to the Ridgecrest Lost and Found podcast. In the same way that you have those weird people that graduate and leave and they find their way back and it's just really awkward, that's kind of what this podcast is about. It's a random assortment of people, things, and ideas, and it's going to be a good time. My name is Logan.
I'm Steven.
And today we have none other than Ben Sticker is in the house. We're excited. We're going to rehash. Well, it's not really rehash. We're going to talk about old stories. We're going to talk about youth ministry, do all the things. Ben, did you want to say hi before we got into it?
Hey, whoever's watching, my mom,
Yeah.
maybe.
That's good people.
Agreed.
Why don't you just give me anywhere from 30 seconds to 3 hours of backstory, however deep you want to go, and then we'll start from there and we'll just get into it.
Okay, fantastic. So for context of this, this is my home church. Ridgecrest is. I was born and raised. I don't know if not necessarily born at the church, but I do think we went to First Jackson for 4 or 5 minutes before we came to Ridgecrest, but I don't remember that.
Right.
And so grew up even seeing the chapel where you meet for students was our sanctuary, and then I can remember when the rack, I just love saying the word. Does anybody call it the rack anymore?
If you're over the age of about 50, there's a good chance you'll say rack.
Well, I'm 33, and so I don't know what that says about me. Old soul. And so we went to do the worship service there, and I can remember making the walk down to the sanctuary to that beautiful red carpet, and it is what it is. And so did that, and now
That's what a lot of people say about the red carpet.
decades later, yeah, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Decades later, I'm a student pastor in the area in Brandon, got a wife and almost 4 kids, and
That's so crazy.
get to be friends with you guys. This has been just a fun nostalgia. We
Yeah.
probably should have recorded the
Yeah.
stuff,
It'll be
and
fine.
that
true.
might have been better. So
When is 4th kid coming?
2 months from yesterday. I found that out yesterday in a sonogram, and it kind of hits you different, right? You're like, oh, wow, we're 2 months from now. We don't have a bed set up. I don't know where our newborn clothes is. I know my wife does, so I'm not necessarily worried about that. But, like, your first kid, I think I painted the room. Like, we'd been pregnant for 2 months, and I'm, like, painting the room and getting the nursery ready. This kid, like, I think a friend still is borrowing our bassinet. Like, so we're like, hey, we're going to need that back.
Eventually.
So, it's 2 months, November 6th.
That's wild. And is it a boy or girl?
It's a girl. I have 3 girls now.
Yeah, I know.
1 boy, 3 girls. So this is the last one, best one, is what I keep saying. The finale.
Yeah. And
I don't mess that up again.
I don't know if I don't think I've met any of your kids, but just from watching your son just on socials and stuff, he seems like a trip.
Oh, he's fun, my bud. He's 7 years old, and it's so funny. I was in Starville last night preaching, and I showed a picture of my family from the gender reveal, and he in the video, it's so funny because he didn't know. We knew it was a girl. Jordan and I had figured that out early because I had to be prepped. I just had to brace myself for that. And I'm excited about a girl again, by the way. Let the record show I'm excited. But my son did this whole no when he found out. But now he's cool because he realizes he will never have to share a room with anybody.
Nope.
I mean, he's the male. We're not going to do the male and female thing. And so we might have 3 girls in a room together one day. He'll always have his own room, and he thinks it's cool now.
Yeah. You gotta couch things a certain way.
That's right. Spin zone.
I've met people that have done the like brother sister sharing a room thing, and no judgment, but it's just an interesting concept to me.
Tell me one story where that's been successful.
I agree completely.
Husband and wife can barely share a room successfully together nowadays.
Yes.
You can't find a brother and sister that's been successful.
Half the time, the 2 brothers in a room is the worst idea
Oh,
ever.
absolutely. You probably got some folks from the 40s and 50s. When I was their age, that's all we had. Like, well, okay, fair enough, but you didn't have to share things. It's not going to work anymore.
No. Yeah, that's you're gonna have 3 girls. That's gonna be awesome.
I will. Thanks for reminding me.
That's what I was gonna say. It's weird because I have 2 boys.
Yeah.
But when we had Cannon was the second, people were like, Logan, if he gets a girl, he's gonna lose it. And my whole thing was like, I'm not. I would be so pumped to have a girl. I guess people just think like because I'm such a boy dad, whatever that means. I'm gonna take it as a compliment. They were like, Logan would freak out. And I'm like, no, it would just be awesome. You just have a girl instead of a boy.
People ask me all the time, are you a girl dad or are you a boy dad? And I genuinely, can I not be both?
So what a weird question when you have both gendered kids.
It's really kind of conflicting. I'm like, well, maybe, and I try to tell people, I'm like, maybe he doesn't know. I have boy and girls. And I'm like, no, I know. Boy dad or girl dad? I hope I'm a subpar dad at both of them at the very minimum. And I think we are, and so we're just trying. I can just be a dad, not a boy dad or a girl dad.
So I have a question we'll get into, but is there anything that you wanted to throw out? First things first. Anything?
I thought I had something, but I forgot what it was.
Nice.
If I had it,
Nice.
But I will say, just on the topic of boy dad or girl dad, when we found out we were pregnant, we were nervous when we found out that Peter was a boy, because like with my family, we talked about this a little bit before we started, but I've basically raised a bunch of girls.
Yeah.
And so I felt more prepared for that. So that was a little bit of a, I don't know if like people would look at me and like they think with Logan, think, wow, what a boy dad. I don't know what people think of me, but I was more prepared probably mentally to have girls, but we ended up having a boy.
And I think the newborn and toddler phase, so much easier to be a boy dad than a girl dad. I mean, you got it good right now.
I was about to say,
but when they turn into like a 5 or a 6-year-old and emotions start taking over, I walk into my house sometimes, and my oldest daughter is a 5-year-old, but like she's not even experienced true change to her body yet. If you need to know what that means, you can ask your parents.
This is not the podcast for that.
That's exactly right. Moving on. But she can be in an emotional state, and I'm like, what am I dealing with right now? I don't know how to navigate that. As a kid, as a young, like a baby, newborn, toddler, fantastic. My toddler is awesome. Yeah. Can't wait for the newborn. They turn 5, I freak out just a little bit, right? I can't imagine the teenage years in doing what we do.
Well, I tell people all the time, one, middle school is the worst. Like I tell students, but mostly I tell parents, you just got to survive.
That's right.
Like middle school.
Yeah.
Because the boys have so much puberty happening, they don't have a clue what's going on. They're like literally aliens in their own body. And then for some reason, at some point between 6th and 8th grade, a girl just turns into the devil. Like they are just mean and vindictive, and they can't help it. They just are.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. Is that the same across the spillway?
100%.
Everyone just perfect over there?
Yeah, right. It's Rankin County, man. What do you expect? Come on. I had a conversation with a dad the other day who has an 8th grade daughter, and I've been at Pine Lake where I'm at long enough to where I saw her as a preteen, super sweet, but she's just transitioned into quote unquote the devil, as you said. And the dad said, "Man, we have messed up in this last year," and I just kept reminding him, "You're normal." Yeah. Like this, like props to you. As a matter of fact, if they're not experiencing emotions and uncontrolled, crying and all of these other things that come along with it, and wanting to buy $500 homecoming dresses, I would question like what's going to happen in their later teenage years. And so that's been the fun thing in student ministry, as long as I've been doing this now, is you watch the crazy and you're like, there's no chance that they're going to be a help to our society. And then they become bank vice presidents, and you're like, man, like how did that transition into something good? Yeah. But that just keep trucking along. That's what I keep telling parents on that side of the world is, man, this too shall pass.
We had it at my last church. I had a girl who was just struggling. She was at a very small private school. All the small private school things were happening, and I remember as a 10th grader, I was like, you've just got to get out of here. Yeah. Like, not that you need to leave or do anything crazy, but like, right now, your bubble is this big. And when you graduate, you're going to probably go to state, and then it's going to get to this. And then you're going to graduate from state, and it's going to get huge. And I was like, life will be so different. You just got to get out of this little bitty town, this little bitty bubble, and life will be better. And so far, life has gotten better.
I'm telling you.
But it's a crazy time. Yeah, hormones are a real thing. Teenage years are a real thing.
Life you fast.
So my quintessential parent question is, since you have 1, I have 2, you have 3, almost 4. What was the hardest transition? Like 0 to 1 kid, 1 to 2, 2 to 3?
2 to 3 for sure, which makes me a little nervous about the 3 to 4 that we're going to experience. Everybody that tells you, oh, you have 2, what's 1 more? They're lying to you. I'm just telling you, like that they made that up, or we did it wrong, and I don't think we did it completely wrong. 1 to 2, I was more emotionally worried because I had so much love. You got so much love for your child. Yeah. And then I was I battled with it. I was like, man, how is my heart going to love somebody else as much as I love this kid? And then, I mean, it's just the beauty of Jesus, right? We can talk about Jesus on this podcast a little bit, right? I think. He just does that for you. He splits your heart in 2, and you got that kind of love. So emotionally, we were good to go. But like the true zone defense thing that people talk about is a real thing, and you've just got to think differently.
Yeah,
I mean, there's no other way around it. We could we could kind of like, hey, I'm going to take him, you're going to take her, or vice versa when it was just two of them. But you had the third one, you're like, I'm going to take him, you're going to take her, and who's going to get her? You know, it's just, you got it like, oh, yeah, we have one more. And so it gets easier, but that is something that even right now I'm a shade nervous, if I was honest, okay, so what happens when we throw one more in the mix? So don't listen to those people that say, oh, what's one more? You know, it's literally one more human being. It literally
is one more.
Yeah.
Because we feel that with two, because we feel like we're maxed. Because it's like, okay, I got him, you got the other one. And it's like, oh, well, what would we do if we have a third one? And so, but the 3 is interesting because people are like, 3 is like, was crazy difficult. And there's people that was like, 3 was nothing. 3 is just, we just threw the kid on our back and rolled.
Yeah.
So
and I'd love to have coffee with those folks in here. Like, well, what does that really mean?
I wonder if they just literally just dragged them along. They said, hey, come on, you'll figure it out. You'll be fine.
Yeah, except for there's like dirty diapers and there's things that you really have to factor into your life.
I know. I don't get it either. It's interesting.
I can remember when my third was born, we were living here. We were already here at the time back in the Jackson area. We were living on the coast when we found out we were pregnant. And God had called us back up here, back home, essentially. And I can remember the very first night we had brought her home, and she woke up in the night. And you would have thought it's the first night I'd ever had a kid in my house. Yeah. I just forgotten, right?
Yeah.
And then like the very first time that I traveled with my 3 children, my 2 older ones had gotten old enough where like you didn't pack the bags with the water bottles and all of the things. By the way, my parents never walked around with me in a water bottle. I don't know why we now decide that our kids we got to have water. Like every school supply list I have, we've spent more. I'm in debt because of water bottles because we just got to buy these kids water bottles now.
It's crazy.
And so the first time I do this trip, like it's just me and the kids, and I realize I got to bring a whole bag with me.
Yeah.
You know, now we still bring the bag. I don't know what. I guess we have 2 bags when we have 2 kids. I don't know what's going to happen.
Maybe a bigger bag.
A bigger bag.
Yeah.
We'll carry
like a
rolling suitcase everywhere we go. For our 2 little kids.
I was listening to a comedian on a podcast talk about she was talking about how like she said when we would go to like Six Flags or just anywhere, my husband would always say, you get 1 water bottle and you just share. She said, I was just dehydrated for 15 years. And I thought I made me think about that because now it's like everyone's got to have half a gallon of water 100%. In a Hydro Flask or a Stanley Cup.
My son, my oldest, his school supply list literally said, I think it gave a degree, a temperature. My wife could confirm that. Well, we were laughing. And if it's this hot, then you just send 2 water bottles.
Oh, my God.
There are water fountains everywhere.
I was like,
it's refill.
There's literally tap water. It's on tap.
But no. Let's buy 2 Camel packs that cost $25.99 a piece. It's not our government, it's our school systems.
Yes.
I'm just kidding. I love our school systems.
Anyway, I think a fun place that I want to start, and it'll tie into kind of your upbringing and church life, and I think we'll just go from there. We are old enough to kind of have experienced the explosion of the Madison County, Rankin County, all of it, but especially in Madison, the church scene was wild. Now, we were both young when it really was happening, but we got to kind of experience it.
Yeah.
Walk me through, to the best of your ability, what life was like, 90s Ridgecrest, when, like, as you said earlier, there was a time when it was like First Madison and Ridgecrest.
That's right.
And there was a time before that when it was like First Madison and Ridgecrest was like the new hip church meeting at MRA.
MRA. I can barely remember an MRA Sunday. Like I feel like there's like this deep core memory. My parents would listen to this and be like, "You're crazy. You were like 1." But I can remember a couple of core memories. Or there was a time where like something happened on this campus and we had to go back over there. But there's a core memory there. I don't know if some historian can confirm that for me. That'd be awesome. But Ridgecrest was just community for us. I mean, like this is really if you ask me to bring up a memory of my childhood, it probably happened at Ridgecrest, whether it was a Wednesday night supper. I mean, the line would be like out the door in the old fellowship hall and then over to the gym. My mom was involved in everything. My dad was involved in everything. I can genuinely remember there were times that you'd do Sunday morning church with all the traditional things that went along with it. You'd do Sunday night church. We would typically, if we met for Sunday morning church in the gym, back when we did that for a minute, we'd come do Sunday night in the sanctuary. In the chapel now is what we call it. It was the old sanctuary. I was baptized there, which was fun too, just to kind of see it. Logan took me on a tour earlier, and it was fun to reminisce. And then like my dad would, he was on like the visitation team or committee, or I don't know what they called it back then. And so I'd sometimes come up here on Mondays with him, and we do like Monday night visitations to people in the community. And then I'm sure something happened every Tuesday, every now and then, but then certainly Wednesday night happened, and you just rinse, wash, repeat, all those kind of things. And it just was community. I mean, seriously, most of my childhood memories, some that are fantastic and some where I was a little knucklehead, happened right here in these buildings.
I didn't tell you, Stephen, the earliest memory I have of the Sticker family is my brother and his brother were the same age. Mm-hmm. And so they played baseball together forever. But the earliest memory I have is going, hey, does Burr's dad have a tattoo? And my dad was like, yeah. And so I was like kind of looking at it, and I was like, does he have a butterfly tattoo? And then my dad went, yeah, he was a hippie, but it was fine. He's a great guy. He was just a hippie for a while.
To this day, I don't know if I know the true story of the tattoo.
Oh.
There was a time when I was younger that I told people my dad was in Vietnam, because one time he told me he got it in Nam. And I didn't know dates and times. And so people would be like, where'd your dad get the tattoo? And I'm like, Vietnam is what he said.
And you got to know that some people were walking up there like, did you tell your kids you were in Nam? And he was like, don't worry about it. It's fine.
Didn't bother him at all. So I really still, to this day, I'm not certain I know the true story of the tattoo, but he has it.
Yeah, it just cracks me up. But yeah, like, and it's so wild now because there's so many different churches, and Madison has just exploded. I remember, I was like, the first house we ever lived in was on Jennifer Court, which is right across from Strawberry Patch Park. So I've been in Madison forever. And I remember there was just, forget churches. There just was nothing around. There was a jitney jingle, and that was there, or jungle, whatever it was. And it was just a crazy time. And, Ridgecrest had, there was a season, a pretty long season, where like it was blowing and going. Like it was crazy.
So much fun. It was. Our friends were all here, and a lot of it is just there was nowhere else to go in that sense. And God was moving here, and God's still moving here. Clearly, you guys are still here, and God is still doing a lot of work. And I'm super thankful for this place specifically, for a lot of the formations it had in my life and in my parents' life, and in lives still today. But you're right. I had a friend that lived on Old Rice Road.
Yeah.
Which now, like, it's nothing to think I'd go to Old Rice Road. But I lived my whole childhood across the street from North Park Mall.
Yeah.
In Greenbrook subdivision is what it's called. And I can remember I would go visit that friend, and it genuinely felt like you needed a pack of lunch to go over there. Because you're like going through the country to get there, and you think we'd never make it. We would never, and somehow like we would make it.
Yeah. And now I have students that'll live like in Tidewater or something. They'll have to go to the backside of Lake Caroline, and they're like, are we in a different time zone? And I'm like, no, it's still Madison. It's how it goes. Quit complaining.
Blown up.
So you sparked something for me. Put on your youth minister hat.
Okay.
I was talking to a parent who's now an empty nester, and he was talking about when he was in, he called it youth group, and he was like, man, when I was in youth group, like, this is just what I did. Like, my friends were my church friends, and everything we did was here. And today you still have that somewhere, but a lot of ways it's just different.
Yeah.
And maybe it's because the churches are bigger. Maybe it's because I think it has a lot to do with the fact that, like, we have 9 feeder schools. What do you think is different, what good, worse, or otherwise, about kind of your more old school youth group, and why isn't it like that today? Just broad brush.
Yeah, I hate to be the shake the fist at the earth guy and say it was social media. That's got to play a factor in it, right?
Yeah.
There's
if you weren't going to say it, I was going to say it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It has to play a factor in there. But I don't know if it's the main factor. I do think that the community outside of the walls of church has gotten better.
Yeah.
I think in a way, like the world learned from the church, because the church learned community, especially in the Bible Belt, right? You may get to Montana and they would say beg to differ, or out in California. But really in the Bible, this was community, right? There is I think of the Collier family where our family was deep into athletics. The Collier family was deep into technology specifically. But we still were friends and community, right? Because the church brought us together specifically. And man, my upbringing here, I was baptized here, but my relationship with Jesus was never priority, but I still loved being here and I longed to be here. And so I think a lot of it has to do, and this is a call back to the church, honestly, is the community just got better around us and they learned how to be fun. And you talk about the 9 or 9,000, I don't know what number you use for feeder schools that are around here. It's really unreal.
It's crazy.
But there are things to do, there are options to have. And so instead of us saying as the church, well, don't go out there, we're mad at you for going out there, continue to open the doors wide open and let there be community that flows outside of the walls.
Yeah.
There is merit to bringing the church to the people and getting outside of the doors, but we got all this space, we may as well use it too.
Yeah.
Right. And so Ridgecrest was that for me, man. It was a place where I could find community. I can remember even as we're sitting here, my mom I would get grounded. I got grounded a lot as a kid. I just did. That's another time and another day. I could probably share a few of those stories, but we may have to go offline for a couple others. But it would be like, know this, know that, and we didn't have, I don't even know if I did have game systems, but I didn't play them. But
right.
It'd be like no TV, no game systems. Like, okay, cool. And then she'd be like a no youth choir. And I'm like, no youth choir?
Yeah.
Like, I don't even sing anymore, but like no youth choir.
What
do you
doing?
mean no youth choir? And so it would be like, man, that hurt my heart. Now, like you tell kids like no youth choir, and like, oh, you promise? It's just the changes happen. But whether you want to go social media, and I think you can, or you want to say the community's gotten smarter, or the community is kind of caught up to the church, it's probably time for the church as a whole just to rise back up and say, no, we are pro community.
Yeah. I don't know. It's something that we're actively trying to figure out here is whether you call it you're fighting everything else or you're working around everything else. I'm trying to get that youth group feel back. Mm-hmm. And it's the question of how do you get it back, but then also how do you scale that? Because, a lot of those people that you talk to, they went to a country church where there was 5 of them.
Yeah.
And, how do you do that well with 50 or 100 or 150? That's where my brain is at ministry-wise is how do you hold that and then how do you scale that? And, there's lots of ideas we could go back and forth on it. Stephen, what is – it doesn't have to be like the first memory you ever have, but like what is a core memory that you have of like either youth group or kids Ridgecrest? Because you were here
I've been
your
here
whole life.
Since 2000.
Yeah.
I was baptized here.
The turn of the millennium brought the Colliers.
It did.
How ironic that Y2K is. They were like, you know what, we're going to Ridgecrest. We survived.
We moved here in 2000. We may have not become like official church members till 01 or something. I don't know.
Knowing Forrest, he wanted to kind of scope things out for a bit.
We did. Yeah. I don't remember any of the other churches though. Funny enough, I just remember Ridgecrest. This has just always been my church. As far as core memories go, like I said, I was baptized here. Lots of memories of just, hanging out, kind of like Ben was saying, just being here all throughout the week. Easter programs we used to do, like the actual like drama ones. You remember those?
Goodness gracious.
Yeah, it's been a while. But just being here when the adults were here while they were like making the set or rehearsing and everything. That's kind of how I got into the AV stuff is I would hang out with my dad. Because my dad used to run all the AV stuff here, and he still volunteers every now and then. They go to Broadmoor, but he helps me out when I need it. But he used to run all that stuff, so I kind of learned all that through him. We had a Bible Man show here.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
Goodness, I remember that.
Like official Bible Man?
Official Bible Man, like actual Bible Man.
I feel
what's
like
his name? What's the main guy's name? Kurt?
That's a flex right there.
I don't remember his
He
name.
came, though.
He did.
He came.
He signed my
awesome.
my Bible Man Bible that I had. He was great.
I saw Third Day here.
When did they play here?
I mean, years ago. Maybe even pre-2000, but Third Day played. Somebody can confirm that. I know that. Greg can confirm that.
Probably. The only
Third Day played here.
The only like band that I remember coming here was Super Chick and everyone that they brought.
Super who?
Super Chick. You don't know Super Chick?
I don't remember Super Chick.
Oh gosh.
I mean, I remember Ninth Hour. Obviously, they played often. But
maybe it was Pastor
They were a
time.
thing for a while.
Yeah. But no, we had a Bible Man show here. I helped run lights for that, even though I was like 7 years old, so I probably wasn't actually helping with lights. They probably gave me like an unplugged in keyboard, and I was like, look at what I'm doing.
Yeah.
But no, just being homeschooled especially, There's my one mention per episode. My sense of community and family and any social interaction was Ridgecrest. It was the church. And so this place has always been really important to me. Because otherwise I'm just at home, you know?
Yes.
Yeah.
Getting maybe bullied by your older brothers, but that would never happen.
You can't prove that.
You can't prove that.
So, Ben,
Marks are not visible.
Tell me if I just don't have this nailed, but I'm pretty sure I have it nailed. When my first day here, when I whatever the student pastor version of it in view of a call is, a guy walked up to me that's the same age as me, went to school together and everything. And I went, "Hey man, it's good to see you. Like I hope we get to hang out some while I'm here." And he said, "Logan, if you would have told me in high school that you were going to be a pastor, I would have laughed in your face." And I said, "Oh, good. Well, thank you, I guess."
Yeah.
Does that ring true for you?
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, I still run into people. I've been doing this for 13 years now, and I still run into people, especially from. So we moved back in this area almost 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And so I will occasionally still. We're going to a Mississippi Braves game tonight. It really could happen tonight, where somebody says, "What are you doing these days?" And I say, "Well, I'm a student pastor." Really? I mean, it's just like that's that kind of like.
What?
Well, thank you for that. You know, and
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even have hair anymore. You know, I've grown up a little bit, but no, it happens all the time to me as well. And there was that was hard at first. You know, honestly, I would get nervous walking around and seeing people and running into folks. But no, it certainly I get you have it nailed, my friend. Where I would I still get that to this day.
Give me the map from you going from here to Brookhaven all the way through.
Yeah, so so the Lord really changed my life when I was 19 years old, and got me into a discipling relationship with some guys, and I had an opportunity. I was working at Cups Coffee Shop, just trying to figure out what I was going to do. I'd stopped going to school for a little bit, and had a chance to go work at First Baptist Madison part-time as a junior high pastor. Now that'll affirm your calling, a part-time junior high pastor for sure. See if that's what you're called to do or not.
That is you barely made it in.
No, I'm exactly right. You know, are you sure I'm called to this, Lord? And so got back in school, got started finishing that up. I was discipled by a guy named Jason Holmes, who was our student pastor for a little season there at Broadmoor. My family moved from Ridgecrest, just family things, back my sophomore year of high school, and we went to Broadmoor, my sophomore year, junior year, and senior year of high school. Jason was the student pastor there. I'd really connected. I think we were in between transition of student pastors here at that time, and so that was part of it. Is I was so disengaged and didn't want to be at quote unquote youth group, and so Jason and I formed a great relationship, even though I was not necessarily interested in church. And so when the Lord changed my life at 19, I started driving down to Brookhaven, Mississippi, to be discipled by Jason.
Do you know Jason?
Mm-mm.
This is probably going to make him feel big-headed. He's one of the greats of youth ministry.
The goats, if you will.
I mean, for real though, he's one of the good ones.
Yes.
Anyway, continue.
He's fantastic, and so Jason would disciple me on a weekly basis. I would drive down to Brookhaven, and he had this cute little intern named Jordan Henning, and so I started tracking Jordan just a little bit. Had an opportunity while I was at First Madison to transition to move to Brookhaven, and she was from there because we started dating. Who wouldn't want to move where your girl is? And so a couple of years into that, we got married. 6 months into our marriage, were called. I was an associate on that staff, associate student pastor, I think was my title.
Mm-hmm.
And I got 6 months into our marriage called by First Baptist Church Summit, which was just 20 minutes, 30 minutes south of Brookhaven, an incredible church. Brother Phil, back in the day, was the pastor at First Baptist Summit. His face was on the wall of fame, and really got a chance to learn my ministry there. So I was student pastor. I was the guy. Didn't have the guy above me anymore. Wasn't the associate, so the safety net kind of got cut out from under me. Learned a ton of ministry there, and just networked, man. Just started networking with people.
And things from what I heard went great at Summit. Like
Summit's incredible.
I heard it was wild, like in a great way.
Oh, it was great. It was great. Man, I could the families there were awesome. I could say, "Hey, we're going to go play in traffic." And I'd have 100 kids show up. I mean, they just were They were on fire for hanging out. Small town, and really, again, kind of what we talked about a few minutes ago about Madison and how Madison kind of grew up. There was nothing else to do other than go to school or go to church, and so we leveraged that. Man, we opened the doors many times we could. We brought fifth quarters back, and they loved them.
Yeah.
The only thing we didn't bring back is lock-ins because I think those should be buried forever.
They're of the devil.
But exactly, I think you have lock-ins in hell. I mean, that's just what
That's literally what it is.
it certainly is. So we're at Summit for 3 years or so, a little bit over 3 years, and just felt God calling us to the coast. I can't explain that. I can't understand why.
Before you get there.
Okay.
Last thing I want to say, I was talking to Russ. Do you know Russ Daniel, John
I do
Daniel?
know Russ, yeah. I know John better, but I know Russ.
So Russ spent some time down in Brookhaven,
Yeah.
and I was talking to him about it, and he just said, man, especially after he's at First Ridgeland now,
Yeah.
and he loves First Ridgeland, but he said there's something different about youth ministry in Brookhaven.
Yeah.
And it's probably a lot to what you said, where it was like, this is what you do.
Mm-hmm.
But he said, I used to just do a parenting conference, and you'd have 150 parents show up, and because it was just things were just different down there.
Yeah.
Did you feel like that?
Yeah, so my wife is born and raised there.
Right.
And so Brookhaven is kind of home. My parents have moved away from this area, and so, I mean, this is always going to be home for me,
Right.
the Metro Jackson area. But Brookhaven, I mean, my wife has a brick with her name on it at the local playground down there. I mean, it's small town Mississippi.
Yeah.
We love it. My kids love it. And it is. It is just, Brookhaven's different. And, like, I'm imported in, so I'm kind of a Brookhavenite.
Right.
But, like, you got to be one of us down there. I mean, we want you, like, you're welcome. Come back anytime. Come see us when you want to. But, like, you ain't Brookhaven unless you're Brookhaven. You know what I'm saying?
Oh,
and so, yeah, it's
believe me.
built different down there for sure. And Summit's kind of the same way as I moved down there. I mean, you know, they're Pike County proud down there, and I love Summit. I got some great friends that are still down there, and miss those people. Some of them even daily. But it's very blue collar.
Mm-hmm.
It's very Summit, Brookhaven, those kind of areas. It's like you go to college at Southern, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. You name your college, you go there, and then you don't come back. But then you turn 30. And you start having kids, and you're like, we want to raise our kids where we were raised.
Right.
And that's when they all move back. You're 24, 25, you won't have any friends because they all left. And they're like, oh, you're still here. Good for you. but so we kind of we experienced a little bit of lonesomeness.
Yeah.
We were, you know, our best friends were the parents of teenagers that we were pastoring at the time.
Yeah.
And so God was, you know, probably uprooting some of that in us because we love that, but still love that place. But we got a call from a church in Gulfport, and it was kind of funny. I got called asking if I knew anybody that was interested, and I was like, you know, I don't know, but we'll check. And so I went down there for a visit, just to kind of lay my eyes on it, and I realized it was me that was being called, not somebody. And so we kind of started that process. We were there for some incredible time. Something down there happened called COVID. Did that happen up here?
Very much.
I'm just making sure. I didn't know.
Some would say it didn't, but
some would say it didn't, but
roughly 50% would say it didn't.
Yeah.
50% would say it was the worst thing ever.
Yeah. So we we experienced COVID down on the coast, and that was a special experience, and had a small staff down there, and so I was doing 4 or 5 things. I was doing student ministry, missions. I was doing worship for a season. That was special, to say the least. And right after I had left Summit to go to Gulfport, I got a call from a guy at Pine Lake, where I now serve, that his niece and nephew were in my student ministry in Summit, and he'd always promised him he'd never call me then, but I'm gone now, and would I be interested in coming? I was like, no, I just left this place. But he and I had formed some relationship and friendship, and really what we realized is we would have never left Summit probably to come back to Pine Lake. I used to joke all the time and say, I'm never moving back to the Madison area, never moving back. The joke's on me because 3 years into being in Gulfport, I moved back to this area to go serve at Pine Lake, at the Reservoir campus where I currently serve today. And I had to move back into my parents' house that they still owned in Madison. So I always said, I'm never moving back to Madison. And I moved straight back to Madison when I moved here. We lived here for 6 months, had our third child until we sold our house in Gulfport and bought one over where we live now.
That's awesome.
And we're still here.
I didn't realize you were only in Gulfport for 3 years.
It was not long at all. It feels like a long time. I think COVID made everything feel longer.
Yeah.
I mean, we had moved in COVID back to this area January of 2020. Technically, December of 2020 is when we moved. And it was, I mean, like I had felt like I'd gone out of one time warp and into another time warp.
Yeah.
It was wild. And now that feels like that was ages ago.
Because that's been 3 years ago.
Yes.
You're just moving in threes.
It's crazy.
Well, hopefully you're not moving in
I
threes.
hope not to move again for sure, but
we're going to break that cycle.
Yes, we are.
Well, I think Megan's grandfather was at First Gulfport.
Back in the day. He was not there with us.
No, yeah.
I'd heard the
Way
legend of Kylie Young, man.
And he, like, in the same way that you talk about Summit and Gulfport and stuff like that, like, he loved Gulfport.
Oh, it was incredible.
Like, it's his story, but he had to step down for a health reason. But, I mean, I think if that wouldn't have happened, he would still be at Gulfport. Like, he loved it.
Bro. I love where God has us. And honestly, pray that God keeps us here even forever. We really, really feel like my kids love their schools, all that kind of stuff. But Gulfport, we miss Gulfport.
Yeah.
And the church was fantastic. The area was awesome too. We lived in a great neighborhood. We had cool neighbors, great friends, all that kind of stuff. It was just a fun place to be. The coast is fun.
You were we got lunch however long ago that was, and you were talking to me about, you say you hit a certain point, career-wise, family-wise, whatever, where you start to really value like stability. Like you were talking about like your kids, you're like, I kind of want my kids to not have to move every year and a half.
100%.
And you're like, so it's cool when God's like, hey, hopefully for a long season, but at least for a season, we're going to kind of let you put some roots down and bring things back.
That was part of my resistance to even coming where we are now. Is we loved Gulfport, and it was like, God, what are you doing? We enjoy this. I feel like our ministry is fruitful. We feel like we're needed. Even God doesn't need any of us, but we feel like we were being valued. Like He was using us. But really, what He was doing was He was again. I would have never gotten the call to come where I'm at now had I not left Summit.
Yeah.
And so we realized that Gulfport was a great season of stopgap, and we developed some lifelong friendships when we were down there. We went to visit this summer and picked up with people that we had not seen in years, and we do. We feel like God has us exactly where He wants us, and it just took a couple of leaps, I guess, so to speak.
That's crazy. Do you feel like you're encroaching on lifer youth pastor territory? Because you've been in the game for a minute.
I've been in the game for a minute. I'm in like I guess would I be like a veteran card status now? Is that how? When do you get the veteran card? Like
it's
10 years?
It's got to be something.
Yeah. I had lunch with a guy today, and he asked me that same question. He said, "What do you want to be doing in 5 years?" I don't know, serving the Lord. I'm a different season now than what I was doing. I really where I'm at right now, I get a chance to lead the leaders of the ministries. So I'm over 5th through 12th grade ministry at my church, and I get to be the one that kind of leads and shepherds those that are leading out the ministry. But there are things like tomorrow morning, I'm bringing donuts to an FCA, and I'm like a giddy schoolboy. I get to do the ministry a little bit, and I went to a school the other day and got a chance to help feed a football team, and so those things are still fun. It's just now I have 4 kids, and it's like, well, what do you do with all those while Dad goes and does his youth ministry thing? So it's been fun to make a bit of a transition. I was a little nervous about it at first, to be honest with you, but to make a transition of doing more coaching and resourcing those that lead the ministry, and just encouraging them and loving them, because I'm only 33. I don't feel like I'm super old, but that's kind of old in student ministry nowadays.
Yeah. So you still get to do some of the blocking and tackling, as they say.
A little bit of the blocking and tackling, that's right. But I can't go full 4 quarters anymore. I'm just not as spry as I used to be.
It's weird because I'm 30, and I feel like 30 is kind of that moment where you're trying to figure out, like, you're not the either single or just married, no kids youth pastor, but you're not like the 44-year-old that has kids in student ministry. Because both of the I've heard sometimes the same church say, like, both of these are incredible and these are like so helpful, and then when it's 30, it's like you just have a bunch of toddlers and life gets really hard for a while. So ministry is it's interesting how, from the youth pastor side, ministry can just look so different depending on where your life stage is at. And so, I think about lifers in youth ministry all the time, and I'm like, it's just incredible how there's not many of them, first off, because I think they still throw that stat around that, like, the average youth pastor's at a church for like 18 months.
It's crazy, 1.5 years.
Yeah, and for us that you've been in church 3-4 years or so, you're thinking like, I didn't do anything in 18 months. Like a year and a half in, We hadn't done anything yet. I barely knew everyone's name.
Yeah.
And then, that's just like people are just gone.
And I think that's so. You go back to one of your original questions: is what was different about Madison? It's honestly different. And if you're in ministry, maybe take heed to this. Ask the Holy Spirit if it's true or not, and if it is, think through it. Man, some of these guys, the youth minister here when I was growing up, had been here for like teens of years.
Yeah,
not like I'd been here a year or two and here's that or here's that. I mean, like you start really gaining some ground in year 2 and 3 at times, and it's just super fruitful when you stick with it. And the same's with the profession too. At the same time, I know a lot of guys that are like, I'm gonna do student ministry for a couple of years, but then I really want to go be a senior pastor. And if God calls you to that, that's fantastic. But I think that he starts developing. Man, I wish some of the things I know in year 13 that I'd have known in year 4. It just changes,
Yes.
And the things that were a big deal to me in year 4, I look at in year 13. I had a guy on our student team today came to me and said, I got a huge problem. And he told me what it was, and I said, I wish that was a huge problem, actually. Like, if we could make this the huge problem and move forward with our lives, life would be really, really good today. And I see why he thought it was a huge problem, because in year 2 of student ministry for me, it would have been a massive problem too. But I think you only start gaining that perspective when you keep putting in the time and putting in the hours.
Yeah. And part of it's just surviving stuff. Like
100%.
Like you're like, my life in ministry is over. And then you survive it and you're like, oh, this was okay. And the next thing is like, it's really over now. I remember, like, this wasn't even youth ministry. This is when I was children's interning under Pepper. There was, I don't even remember, there was an event where all the parents were in the worship.
Sponsored by that cookie company right now, by the way?
No, I wish we were.
Be.
I wish we were.
Whimsy?
Yeah.
Sponsored by Whimsy right now.
This 2-minute segment. There was some event to where all the parents were in the worship center, and like the whole staff was there. Even Pepper was gone, and it was like me and a couple other interns. We may have even pulled in like the student ministry interns just to like herd cats.
Yeah.
And on the 3rd floor children's area, it was just pandemonium. Kids were everywhere. We had loud music playing and pizza. And you remember, how this is. The way that it was shaped, giant large group space in the middle. It was a square like hallway that went around it, and all the classrooms were on the ring on the outside. Yeah. So you had this huge square hallway around it, and kids were running like crazy. And I think it was Tate Ratcliffe said, Logan! And I was like, what? And he's like, we got kids that are hurt. And I went, oh my gosh. And it was a staff person's kid and a church member's kid had hit a corner and just smoked right face to face, just knocked each other out. And one of the kids was bleeding. It was the staff member's kid that was bleeding, and he was holding his face, and it was a head wound. And I was like, all right, so we take him into the kitchen, and we put like one of those big fat Band-Aids. And I'm like looking at her, I'm like, is the girl okay? And they said, what girl? And I said, the girl that was in the accident. They said, oh, she's gone. And I said, what do you mean she's gone? And they went, she left. She went to go like talk to her mom. And I was like, oh, we have to find her.
This is how I lose my job.
Yeah. And I said, hey, I think it was Tate again. I said, hey, just take the Band-Aid off and see if his head is okay. And he took the Band-Aid off, and as he pulled it back, a tooth was attached to the Band-Aid. Yes. And so I was like, it was her front tooth.
That's fantastic.
It was stuck in his head. You couldn't see it. And then when you pulled the Band-Aid, it came out. And I said, okay, we have to find the girl because she's missing a tooth.
But now it's easy to find her.
It wasn't. She was gone. Turns out she went to her mom, who was a dentist. And so mom took daughter straight to her office, gave her a tooth, I guess, or however that works, because she didn't have this one. And it was one of those where, like, how the people don't think about the aftermath of those things happening.
No, not at all.
But like, staff member dad was so cool. It was Michael Bowen. He was the coolest. But I had to have a conversation with Pepper, had to have a conversation with Gary Mays, and then I had to have a conversation with Rob. And it was one of those where Rob was like, you could tell that he wasn't happy because like kid got hurt and we had no idea where they were. But he was just like, hey, next time, maybe get the girl's name or just hold on to her until we can actually figure this stuff out. And it was one of those where I was like, one, I'm an idiot. 2, I'm going like to prison is what it felt like. And I was like, my life is over. And now I'm looking at it and I'm like, that happens all the time.
Oh,
and,
my goodness.
And the difference is now we're like, use second nature. We know, like, hey, let's make sure both kids are okay. Let's hold on to them, do all the things. But, just you have those things where you're like, this is the end of the road. Like, it's no big deal. But you're freaking out.
I had a friend that actually he's at Russ Daniels Church in Brookhaven now, the church that Russ was at. You mentioned Russ a minute ago. And his first Wednesday night, he played games and stuff. I texted him the next morning, man, how did it go? And he said, man, a girl broke her arm during a game.
Yes.
I'm done for. I said, who was it? Oh, it's the worship pastor's daughter. And I'm like, well, that's even better.
Yeah.
And turns out it was like a fracture. And so I said, man, it's not even a clean break. We don't get excited about non-clean breaks anymore in student ministry. At this point in the game, I'm like, sweet. What's the story? What's the severity? Yes. I'm like thinking, do you still have the tooth from that one? I mean, but back then you're right. You're like, I'm losing my job.
Yeah. You're like, it's over with. Of course. And are you talking about at East Haven?
Yes.
And Hal doesn't care, or he may have cared. Who knows? But no. if Hal was the youth pastor, Hal wouldn't have cared.
Oh, well, Hal thought it was probably funny. He put it in his next It's Friday documentary that he does.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. But to the best of your ability,
okay,
give me a good youth ministry story.
Goodness, a good
one that's not going to like incriminate you or get you in bad blood with the current church that you're at.
Yeah, fair enough.
We should probably put those parameters in.
That's exactly right. Edit. No, I'm just kidding. And we're back. Man, a good youth ministry story. So I've got two. I've got one when I was a student. We'll tell that on Broadmoor.
There we go.
And then I've got one where I was a part of it. So I had, when I was an intern in Clinton, so I went to Mississippi College, and I was an intern for Morrison Heights Baptist Church. Cool community, tight-knit community and all that. We got pulled over by the cops because me and the other intern took the kids out rolling. And
classic.
We rolled, like, not the mayor, but the mayor's, like, I don't know, sister or something like that. And the mayor went to another church in the city. I probably shouldn't have used city names and stuff like that, because we don't know what our reach is here. Yeah. So sorry, Clinton.
We
still love you.
Some stuff.
But at the end of the day, like, the mayor did not like that church that I was at. He didn't. And so he tried to, like, persecute us to the fullest extent of the law. And it got to the place where I'm kind of cynical by nature and kind of will push your buttons a little bit if you're not going to be a civil adult about something. And so I just continued to kind of like push. And so these kids are feeling like what we were feeling, like the tooth story, all those kind of things. Are like, this is the end of the road for us. And I'm like pushing buttons the whole time. I'm like, well, can you reuse the toilet paper? Or, we put the forks down, so if you wash them, they'll use very well. And so that just, but it was one of the longest nights of my life because we had to get that student pastor involved. It was really kind of frustrating at the end of the day. So that was kind of fun. When I was at Broadmoor, now, this is Jason Holmes' fault completely.
Yes, we will blame him.
One night, Jason Holmes asked me and two of my other friends, Adam and Michael. Their names are Adam Welch and Michael Carlew. This matters for this story. You probably know these guys.
That's a good group to hang with.
And we were asked one night, I don't know if they had to have a room cleaned up, but we've all been there where we've had students come do free labor for us.
Absolutely.
And so we were free labor for Jason this night. He was going to let us hang out at the church all night as long as it took, and we were going to clean out this room on the third floor. That's where the youth meet over there at Broadmoor, and we were going to clean out this room on the third floor. Yep. And we cleaned out, and we got to a roof access point. I got a roof story for Ridgecrest too. I'll get there in a minute.
Some good roof stories here.
And so
sure.
We're opening up Pandora's box. And
so there's good roof stories at Broadmoor too.
Oh, absolutely.
Flat roofs and pretty easy access.
And so we found that access, and we get to the roof, and so we're like, man, let's go get chairs. So we go back downstairs, we get lawn chairs, and bring it up. And Adam says, this is all Adam's fault. Adam, if you ever listen to this is on you. He says, let's sign our names to the roof. And so he had orange spray paint because he worked for Liberty Park for Vern Booth. And so we had orange spray paint, and we signed Ben Man. Why I called myself that, I have no idea. Another story there for my counselor. And then we had Michael signed his name Carlew, and Adam signed his name Welch. Well, what we didn't realize is that our church was going to be breaking ground on a new sanctuary and going to need to take aerial videos. This is before drones. And so we get called. We're at college. Like at this point, like, because we were seniors when that happened, and so we all went to Mississippi State. And so Rob, i.e., calls us, hey, next time you guys are in town, I want to take you guys to lunch. And so we all go eat lunch with him, and Rob, like, reads us the riot act in the most gracious way of that's vandalism, and Jason should have never done that. And Jason at that point had already moved to Brookhaven, so there was no like we're not gonna prosecute anybody. They never were,
right?
But it was quite hilarious.
And you said it could have been any bin man,
bin man, but then the Carlu and the Welch thing gave it away. Why they would sign their names, I don't know. But this is before you put cameras in churches, man. You couldn't get caught for anything.
That's incredible. Yeah, there were a few stories, not quite that good. That may be the best, but just that ladder was too easy to get to
100%
at Broadmoor, and it's still there. If
and
there's
they
students,
never locked it.
Never.
They never put a padlock on it. It's like, come on, people, put a padlock on it. So I got a story here.
Hit me
right,
with it.
A Ridgecrest story. So if you're in the worship center, there are those acoustic panels that are at the very top. And my mom used to sing in the choir here, and so there would be times where my dad was out of town and we'd have to get here early for something, or she'd be singing a solo. And I can vividly remember the guy that was over maintenance at the time. If you said his name, I would say, yep, that's the one. But he was I can't remember his name, though. Maybe it'll come back to me in the story. But he was coming out of there. One of those panels is a door. And you guys know that, but it goes to the cross. But as an 8, 9, 10-year-old, whenever we came into this building,
you're like, it's Narnia.
That thing opened, and a man walked out of it, and I thought, I have to see.
Yeah.
And so I don't know what the context was. It was probably a Sunday night, and it probably was late, and my mom was probably just up here doing something. She was here all the time. Like, if the doors were open, my mom was here doing stuff. She's super faithful and loves the Lord and still serves the church that she goes to in Pachuta, Mississippi to this day. The same
I know.
way.
When she moved away, I was like, what are we doing? She's supposed to be here forever.
She wanted to be a grandma. And,
I know.
And she gets to be a better grandma down there. It's all fun. We kind of prefer it because it's a really, really cool place to like go and hang out and all that good stuff. But we were up here late one night, and I snuck in to that panel because, again, we don't lock things for whatever reason. Like, you got places and you're like, hey, don't go in there. How about you just put a lock on the door? And so I just pulled that thing up, and I realized that I could get all the way into the steeple. And so dadgummit, is like an 11-year-old probably. I got in the steeple by myself and then thought, like, my mom could be looking for me right now. This is before cell phones and all that kind of stuff. And so I got down. Nobody ever knew it. Nobody ever knew, or at least they never told me. And I feel like they would have like been like, hey, son, we know what you did. But I can remember as an 11-year-old getting in that steeple, and yeah, it was a good time. So kids, it's locked now. Don't go try it.
And the steeple, probably to an 11-year-old, was probably like the coolest thing ever. Now, the steeple ladder is the sketchiest thing ever. You're like, I could die 10 ways from Sunday. And it's crazy.
Oh, yeah. It was now I do remember thinking, like, because this is a pretty vivid memory for me of like climbing up the ladder and being in there, and you could kind of see where the lights were lighting the thing up, and it was nighttime at the time. I didn't have a flashlight, which is crazy now to think about. Why did I do all that without a flashlight? Maybe there was a light switch or something up in there. But I can remember thinking that, like, if I fell, how long does it take people to realize that that's how they lost me? Like, is it a smell that gets me? Like, did they ever check? Like, did I leave the door cracked? Like, I don't know. But I can remember those thoughts kind of flooding through my head of like, is there do I make the news and they think that I've run away, and then I don't know, a week or two later they're like, something stinks up in the church, and they're like, oh man, there he is.
I think the squirrels would have gotten you before then.
Yeah,
I
there's
think
a chance.
It would have been a long time.
Yeah, maybe never would have known.
I just feel like you had something to say in regards to the climbing or the roof or something.
If that were to happen today, where a child went through the door that's totally locked, who would take the fall for that? Is that me? Is that a me thing, or is that somebody else?
We'd probably blame it on C Spire, to be honest.
Okay, yeah,
because that's I mean, they use our tower.
I haven't been in that room in probably like 7 years.
So. Do you have like tech stuff in there? You don't even know.
Nothing I know of. Yeah. So
we may have to find out. It'll be fun.
Is there a lock on it now?
There's a lock.
Certainly, as there should be.
Yeah. Is it, if it's locked, then well.
I can remember, like, I mean, I probably wasn't in I was not in these meetings. I weren't in these meetings. Not English, man. It's getting me today.
Yeah.
But I can remember that there was genuine like calamity and frustration and confusion on whether we were going to let a cell phone company put a cell phone tower in the steeple, because then bad language would be coming through the walls of the church. That was a real conversations. Those people are probably dead and gone now, but
It's probably
those
safe to
were
say.
real things that people were wondering about here on when that steeple was going up. Are we really going to let bad language come through the church? And it's like, oh, if you only knew.
Yeah.
And now we have fake tree cell towers everywhere, and it's just a fun time. So along those lines, at my previous church in Canton, we had a thing in the summer, and I was just trying to be honest, I was just trying to think of something to do in the summer with the kids, and I was like, let's just go to Geyser Falls. And so I was telling the kids about it.
Love Geyser Falls.
And I had a kid he ended up being in the youth, and he's awesome, but he was in like 5th grade at the moment, or maybe it was 6th grade because he was in the student room. He's like, I can't go there. And I said, what? I was like, did you get kicked out or something?
I'm not allowed within 5 feet of a Geyser Falls.
And he said, I can't go. We can't go either. That's blood money. I was like, what are you talking about? And he's like, was there a murder? And he was like, I don't know, but my grandpa says it's blood money. We're not allowed there. And sure enough, his grandfather was chairman of deacons. And I kind of asked around, and I realized, like, oh, because the casino is associated with it. And I was like, well, it was one of those things where I was like, guess where we're not going? Geyser Falls, because that was just a hill I was not okay dying on. And then, but me and the family went there all the time, and it was great.
That was what was really kind of cool about the coast is we had some of our best meetings at the casinos. There were a couple of smoke-free casinos. Those rooms are beautiful.
Yeah.
I mean, they're fantastic. We had a guy in our church that he like general manager of one of the casinos, and so he would give us tours all the time. It was so much fun to be able to utilize their resources. It's actually good stuff. That money's got
except for all that sin.
Well, my pastor's wife, Chip Henderson's mom, excuse me, not wife, his mom, who's no longer with us anymore. We loved Miss Dorothy. She used to always say, the devil's had that money long enough, you take it and give it back to the church. And so go get that money.
That's when I was doing Extension Center Seminary at MC, Gene came and talked to us one time.
Brother Gene, man.
And Gene was the man.
He's awesome.
Like, that's the only experience I have is an hour of him just, I mean, he was just talking. He talked through the church split and just all of the craziness that he walked his church through.
Yeah.
And I remember leaving going, Gene's a cool guy. Like,
He's awesome.
You know, as like a punk 23-year-old who thinks that, you know, that whole room is full of people that think that, like, we all should be mega church pastors because we know ministry better than anybody. And Gene was just like, let me tell you how this works. And let me tell you that life isn't easy and that church isn't easy, but this is what you're called to and this is what you do.
He's one of the good
And
ones.
I was like, oh, this is what, like, what a good pastor who's been doing it for 50 years. Like, here's how you do it well. It was cool.
Still doing it too.
Is he really? I didn't know that.
He's interim, you know, places, things like that.
I think about like him. I think about like Jim, the doctor, and I'm like, those are two good ones.
The OGs.
Yes. And one day that may be you if we're lucky enough.
We'll probably be like the OG student pastors, though. You know, I don't know if we'll make that jump or not.
Who knows? We'll see. We'll see. Maybe by that point, being an OG, like 7-year-old youth pastor will mean something. It'll happen.
I do. You know, I don't know what I'm doing in 5 years, but when I retire, if that's still a thing, if retirement's still a thing, when I'm up for retirement, right?
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if it's going to be a thing when we get to that place. I want to go teach a youth Sunday school class at a small little bitty church, and like I want to be like 80-year-old Mr. Ben that's taking the kids on the church van to go eat pizza afterwards. Like I just think that'd be super fun.
So you know what my retirement plan is?
Tell me.
It's the same basic concept. It was I want to be the maintenance guy of a little church where my job is to change light bulbs and walk around and talk to people.
That'd be fun.
And like maybe like push a dust mop or something.
Yeah.
I think about that. I'm like, if I can just make it. Being that guy at a little church where I just hang out and talk to people, and it's like, oh, I gotta go. I gotta make sure this toilet works. I just think that'd be awesome.
That'd be so much fun.
Steven, any retirement plans?
Let's get through today first.
You're going hour by hour.
Taking it hour by hour. Yeah.
Who knows? Who knows what's going to happen? Yeah, we definitely aren't getting retirement.
I don't.
Definitely not Social Security. That's a foregone conclusion. That may be too political for this podcast, though. Steven, anything else before we wrap this puppy?
No.